Tired of the hype about living the dream? It's time for truth. This is the place for tools, power, and real talk so you can create the life you dream and deserve. Your ultimate life. Subscribe, share, create. You have infinite power.
Hi there, and welcome to today's episode of Your Ultimate Life, the podcast I created to help people live their best life, to create purpose, prosperity, and joy, and do it by using their gifts, their talents, their life experience, the core of who they are. So I have a couple of beautiful guests here. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Great. Now, I don't do introductions. When you talk, you can say whatever people need to know about that. And we'll just get started. This is one of the Thursday edition podcasts for my regular listeners that we started in September. It's about what is happening with the coaching world and what is going to happen over the next 12 months. And I picked that as an arbitrary time frame, but just to illustrate the rapid change that's coming and what we as coaches, can do about it if we want to, but it's not going to be a trivial transition. This is a monstrosity of a transition. So, got these guys here, and we're just going to talk about this for a while. Jonathan, you happen to be on my left side, and I read left to right, so I'm going to start with you. The first question I want to kick this off with is, are you using AI? What are you doing with it? And tell me a little bit about your relationship with this fairly, not really new, but fairly newly minted beast.
Yeah, no, great question. And for your readers or listeners to understand, I'm in the entertainment industry. I launch streaming media channels. So I have several channels on, Roku and Vizio, et cetera. And I'm a commitment to making sure that positive content is out there. So AI is hugely affecting the entertainment industry. Nobody really knows what's going to happen, including AI in every conversation I have with ChatGPT, which is often. So to answer that question, I'm using it often from a research and planning perspective, right? It's so much faster than having to do that by scratch. At the same time, AI does lie and tends to be a little bit geared toward making me happy. So I take all that into consideration. But for the entertainment industry at large, there will be a lot of content that's AI generated. There already is, Soma, et cetera. So I'm looking at that and looking at how we can differentiate non-AI content from AI content. And I think, it's really going to boil down to personal experience and characterizing that from a human perspective, from a heart perspective, versus just coming up with dramatic, lifelike entertainment quality that AI will be coming out with.
What do you notice? You said that it is too nice. It says nice all the time. It tries to make you feel good and all that kind of stuff. And it does, if you let it. My own interactions, I've instructed it to stop doing that. And then it started saying to me, okay, fine, straight, no fluff, here's the answer. And then I said, oh, for crying out loud, would you stop doing any of that crap? I said, no, you said it just like that. Will you just talk to me? I don't need any fluffy crap. I don't need any stage setting. Just talk to me. Let's work together. And it came back and said, understood. And that was it. And then it quit doing all of it. I said, if I want you to do something different, I'll tell you. But right now, this is what I need. Anyway, all right. Well, Dan, what are you doing with this in the context of, I know you help people in a lot of different ways. So tell us what some of those ways are and what you're doing.
Well, I think that I've primarily used it in two ways consistently. Like a lot of entrepreneurs post-COVID, I've kind of built up a group of people that I work with, 1099 employees, volunteers that, I have to interact with over Zoom and over some sort of technology. And because I'm just a very natural doer, I've always had a very hard time being able to write operations manuals. I'm neurodiverse, so just kind of sitting down and doing those different things has always been very difficult for me. So I've used AI a lot to take a lot of a lot of the concepts and the things that I'm doing and build those out into manuals and operating procedures that I can hand off to someone else to kind of run for me. That has always been an Achilles heel for me for as many years as I've been working. And so it really helps me in that regard. The other thing that I use it for is to really help me work on the business. I always say that, between our ears, we have three things. We have our brain, we have our mind, and we have our spirit. And one of the major challenges for most entrepreneurs is the fact that we work in our business so much that whenever we read a great book that says, well, you have to work on your business, read the E-Myth by Michael Gerber, right? But there's just limited brain capacity to be able to do that. And in doing that, it saps your spirit. We all know you can pick whichever fact and figure you want, like, 78% of businesses fail within three years, right? And so one of the things that I just have been doing is trying to find as many ways as possible for AI to just be my brain. Like, instead of just formulating something, I'll ask it a question. Probably much like Jonathan, I have enough content that's in there where it kind of knows me to some extent. And so by AI acting as my brain, it allows me to use my entire mind on whatever the output was. And I can say, that sounds about right. That sounds like me, or that doesn't sound like me. That doesn't sound about right. I think a lot of people get into trouble, kind of to Jonathan's point, where, they take whatever comes from the prompt as gospel, just because they're not using their mind on it. So I've used AI primarily as my brain most of the days, and then I'm able to work on whatever the output was, and that tends to save my spirit. And so I've found that I can work um, more effectively for longer periods of time because I'm just exerting less human electricity in lieu of having the AI use its own electricity to come up with some basic answers for me to work from.
Cool. Well, I'm going to direct it specifically. I'm going to define for a minute. Not that you don't know, guys know this, of course you do. But coaching is it's the chosen profession of guiding, supporting, lifting, encouraging. It's a little bit teaching, but mixed with teaching, but mostly helping people claim the right responsibility and ability to both develop and create and that sort of thing. So when you think about your own interactions with AI, including its mistakes and propensity to, what do blow smoke, if you will, and you have to look at it with your mind, like you pointed out, Dan. What do you see as the sort of the boundary? And this is to both of you. I don't care who answers first. What do you see as the boundary where it's still very useful as a creative partner and to do some of the things? I like the distinction you had about brain, and crossing over the boundary into things that belong really in the realm of the spirit, which is where the essence of our goals and real big desires and things live. Where do you think that boundary is as you see it working with this thing? And I don't care who goes first. Don't even raise your hand. Just talk.
I'll go. I mean, I think it comes down to personal awareness and responsibility. So even before AI, I would suggest that if someone is looking for advice, that they pursue it from a data collection and experience collection perspective. Hey, I noticed this, that, and the other thing. If you start looking for someone to govern your life for you, do this, do that, and rely solely on what an outside input is, then you're going to get into trouble. And I think AI makes that really easy to do because it is so smart. But smart isn't always the answer. Sometimes heart is the answer, not smart.
Ooh, it rhymes. Way cool. Good for you.
I came up with that just now. And so I think that's the distinction, is for me, I need to be able to stay in my heart, even though I'm, gathering information and gathering, maybe minimizing the amount of time I need to spend doing a task. But why am I doing that task? The why has to still come from me.
Cool. Dan, what are you thinking about that?
I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think AI is intelligent. It's just not very smart. And so, because there's so many extraneous variables that it can't do. So, I definitely agree with that. I think that oftentimes we undervalue um, the benefits that come from human to human interaction and being able to isolate and focus on those very, very small nuances of language, nuances of facial features, all those different things. So in many ways, there's one side of me that believes you, Kellan, that it's like, hey, a lot of these different coaching professional things will be eradicated. But then there's the other line of thought that, okay, now that everyone has all the answers, we got that answer from a super fast, super intelligent computer, and now we're trying to put it through our very prehistoric brains. And now that I know the answers, I'm still going to feel like, wow, why can't I make myself do this? Right? Like all of us should be, running 5Ks and eating lettuce and never drinking whiskey. But a lot of us don't do that. Why? And so I think that there are some people who believe this could lead to the eradication of the coaching profession. Some people believe it'll lead to the proliferation of the coaching profession because all these people will say, "My God, I know what to do. I just can't do it." And I need that human to human interaction with our two prehistoric brains working with each other to get me to that goal. Now that I know what it is, now that I know what the answer is, right? That's always the thing. Like when someone is unable to get into shape, me included, it's like, oh, well, someone tell me what to do. Like, what's the diet du jour? Is it Atkins? Is it calorie reduction? Is it eating meat all the time? Like, there's all these are answers, but sometimes you just need to have a trainer who, who puts their arm around your shoulder and says, "Hey, do it this way, and if it doesn't work in 2 months, we'll try it this way." So I think that the limits of it are the fact that it's not human, which is a somewhat obvious thing to say. And we as human beings are hardwired to interact with each other, not hardwired to interact with something that's hardwired. So I think that the limits of it are that we don't truly understand the human brain and what actually leads to real change. We understand it conceptually, but many of us have been around 1,000 attractive people, but we picked out our wife or our girlfriend. It's like, I don't know why it was you, but it was you. We don't understand why that is, and AI can't explain why that is. So I think that depending on which side of the fence that you're on, um, AI might lead to more human interaction. I know when I use AI to become more human, not more robotic. So I can truly focus in on those very small, not, nonverbal verbal cues of people. And I found that that's what made me more effective as a coach.
I love that. And thanks for saying that because here's when I say that 95%, I will say it this way 95% of what passes for coaching now.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is there are so many. I've been through lots of programs and I can't tell you how many thousands of coaches I've either worked with or I've helped do stuff and whatever. And most of my clients aren't coaches, but I still have done that over, I guess, 18 years now. And what passes for coaching isn't. It is the recitation of things that we know about. And what's going to be left that is that humanity is the things that we are, not the things that we talk about. And so that connection of two prehistoric brains is the actual connection of reality. And so many people who are coaching are really using the opportunity to tell people information and talking about stuff. And that is what's going to be completely eviscerated because AI is faster, better, writes it, et cetera, and doesn't ever get tired. And yes, there is a crying need for that intimacy of human connection. That's absolutely true. And one of the things I did for research is got a coaching income distribution as of 5 months ago when I started, and then 17 months later, which is now next Christmas, given, it was an AI analysis and generation. And I also did an analysis of 11 different coaching models that exist today. And I asked the two questions. One is, how effective is each model at creating the outcome promised just from available data? And number two, how vulnerable is that method to what you either can do or will be able to do as you track the arc of development for the short term, 12 months. And it was surprising. The picture wasn't good unless, and this is the unless, that's why I only say 95%. The truth of what will be left is those who are the embodiment of what they teach, not the purveyor of information. In other words, that have the ability and the willingness to have that vulnerable connection, which isn't most of what passes for coaching today. That's been my experience. So I said that, and I want you guys to have a chance to react. You can either vomit on it or whatever you want.
When I think about it, I think about modalities that AI likely will never have, like NET, neuro emotional technique, which relies on intuition, but also is diving into the emotional body of somebody. Intellectually, you can do that, but you can't touch emotionally, or somatic exercises, that sort of thing. Those modalities and modalities like them, to me, have always been much more about what it feels like to be human, and what it means to be committed from a human to human perspective. AI has given me a lot of coaching, but I'm not committed to AI as much as I am to a human being, to you, Kellan, if I commit to something. And I think that that level of human to human touch and somatic and emotional work is something that, if coaching goes in that direction, then that's what, not only will that be available and not available with AI, but to Dan's point, and I love the point you made, it might even be more needed and more prevalent because AI will take care of all the rest and we'll be starved for that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I this past April, I was at the TED conference in Vancouver, and Sam Altman from OpenAI was one of the speakers there, and he was very well. First of all, the guy from TED kind of roasted him a little, but which was always very funny. But he was also very clear about like what AI is supposed to do, and what AI is not supposed to do, and how they go to great lengths to ensure that even though it seems as though there's consciousness, that there will never be consciousness. Now, there could always be, with every hacker in the world, there can always be a rogue faction that tries to create this consciousness, and then we have Terminator 2 and all the fun stuff that's going to happen there. But I think that, I think Jonathan made very good points there. Um, I I think one of the things that we always worry about, and I'll reiterate this from what I said before with the human brain, is we don't know what we don't know. And we don't know the impact of not having to go through a true search process in order to get information. If you see like a fun movie like Luke Wilson's like Idiocracy, you worry about our brains not going through a step-by-step process for problem solving and just having the problem solve what that's going to look like in multiple years. So I think that over time, as we start to see some of the byproducts, once again, we don't know, we don't know. We see the byproducts of not going through the natural brain function of search and rescue, or search and create information. It will have an impact on our brains. We just don't know what it's going to be because we've grown up in a society now, the last 50 years, where it's teach towards the test, get it done as quickly as possible. There's only supposed to be one answer. And we as a civilization will pay a price for that, even though we don't know what it's going to be. So I think because of those things, our brains will have a natural need to search out other human brains. yes, AI will give us a very quick microwavable answer to different things, but it will not reprogram $1 million worth of coding in the human brain to need the connection. And so I think that's what I feel good about, is the fact that, we're using all these great tools, but ultimately our brains are hardwired to need other people and need that type of interaction. And to Kellan's point, what passes for coaching will be the same, but that gives people like myself and Jonathan and Kellan obviously a leg up, because we always, as Kellan mentioned, embody what we do. So the cream will rise to the top, everyone else will drop, and it will, hopefully that dynamic will force coaches to step their game up, because that's what will happen.
There's three things that came to mind as you said that. One is, I don't know if you guys a couple months ago saw the new contract between Microsoft and OpenAI.
Mhm.
It was renegotiated a couple of months ago, came out, and I read through it quickly, and two things stuck out. One is there's a whole boatload more money that's now going to be available for development, some 20 billion extra dollars or something. And the other thing that freaked me out was they now have targets in that agreement for the development of AGI dates, which is like, okay. And so him standing up and promising it won't be this, that, and the other, I take with 12 grains of salt. But anyway, the fact that they have dates before 2030 of reaching AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is the next scary step, just made it was interesting. It has nothing to do with coaching right now. But the thing that did is, as I did all this research, and I put 11 models, how good are they? How vulnerable are they to AI? Low, medium, and high. I just asked them to rate it like that. It got worse and worse as I looked at that. I'm thinking, okay, and I know about the human thing, and I'm right with both of you on that. So finally, I got frustrated, not frustrated, but like, okay, enough that I said, look, man, I get it. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this. Fine. What do you suck at? And I asked them, what do you suck at? What are you not going to be able to do? What are you going to completely face plant on? And, it was a longer description than that, every way I could say that. And it gave a good answer. And you can imagine what it all was, and you've said some of it. But it gave me one line at the end, after all this crap, one line. And this one is the essence of it. And it said, I can't bleed. Okay. And to me, that was like, that's the whole thing. That's it. That's all of it. I can't bleed.
Mhm.
And that, for me, not necessarily for anybody else, but for me, that represents the essence of the truth of connection. Not that connection has to be blood-based, but that is the thing. And so there is a huge opportunity. And I say that on purpose because the people that most, even coaches that are pretty good, still have this reservoir of fear around vulnerability, around the stuff that makes for real deep connection. So I wonder, what do you guys think about the willingness of people to go to coaches, not people, but people who have decided they want to coach, to go to the kind of depth of connection that represents that essence, so that people that want to be with them will actually pay them well enough, pay them well, because cream rise to the top, that means they're going to be really valuable. But I'm wondering, what do you think about people's willingness to do essentially what they haven't been, most of them, haven't been really doing in terms of that vulnerability and real connection? Are they going to be willing?
Go ahead, Dan. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's, I'm going to answer this like a marketing professor.
Okay.
Some people, as a retired marketing professor, some people will, some people won't, right? So coaches have to be very smart about how they market to a target market, because for example, you can buy, Honda Civic, you could buy a Lamborghini. There's a market for both. With the Lamborghini, you're going to sell a ton less, but you might make more money. And so there are going to be, and no shade to anyone who has a Honda Civic, by the way. So there's going to be plenty of Honda Civic coaches who will basically say, "Hey, listen, I'm doing all this research on AI, but then you and I are having a conversation, almost like I'm a therapist. and I'll be someone to talk to. And there will be those who basically say to get to a higher level of understanding, it takes, once again, it takes the vulnerability, it takes the proaction, it takes all these different things. And that's why you're gonna, pay me $10,000 a month to do so. So I think coaches just need to figure out who their target market is, understanding that many more of the people in the world are going to go to the Honda Civic coach. But if you get 10 clients who want the Lamborghini coach, it's going to take way more patience. It's going to take way more marketing. But there is the market for that out there. So I think there's a market for everything. There's a market for people for Eskimos who buy snow cones, right? Even though it's very counterintuitive. So I think coaches, this is where they're worrying less about the AI side of it and much more about the marketing side of it if they desire to be that type of coach that does that.
Cool. Jonathan, what were you going to say?
Well, I think that I agree with Dan actually. I think the vulnerability that it takes to to bleed in front of a client is something that is earned the hard way, and not everybody, coach or otherwise, is going to be willing to do that, or even if they are willing, able. So I like the Lamborghini and Honda Civic approach because analogy, because I think that says it. If I want to really know how to get the most out of life by bleeding, I'm going to go to a bleeding coach. I'm not going to go I'll go to the Lamborghini coach, and not everybody will. But I can't speak for the world's experience, but from my experience, doom scrolling and that sort of dopamine hit is not fulfilling when compared to true love and emotion and connection. And I think AI and the proliferation of technology only makes that reality more and more and more obvious. So so it opens the door for more people to want to bleed rather than just exist. And as more people want to bleed, more people will bleed, and they'll be able to coach that way. So it may be the dawn of a more connected human race. I get scared by the other realities. What worries me the most is I know that I will approach AI from the perspective of knowing no AI, and I will always have the understanding that there's knowledge beyond the knowledge I'm being fed, and that I'm being fed it by somebody. But will my children and will their children know that? We don't know what we don't know, right, Dan? So, yeah, I think I answered the question.
You did perfect. Well, everything's perfect. We're just talking. There are three things that I think about when I think about the barriers. And I love the idea that we're opening a more connected world, because there's no question there is a spiritual revolution going on. There are people craving connection. There's a movement. I see it all the time. I talk to people that talk about this energy. And if you talk to, woo-woo weirdos, and I belong. So if you talk, you can feel it. There's something going on. And okay. But I also think we've trained ourselves to be in this download and double-click world where everything needs to be solvable in the length of a TV sitcom. And that's not reality. And so when you think about coaches making a decision to step up, I'm not convinced yet, and maybe you can convince me, Dan, there's going to be a boatload of work for civic coaches. I think AI is going to wipe most of that out, but I could be wrong. The three things that I think get in the way of that is number one is what I call the head in the sand problem. And I've talked to people that say, oh, we all need human touch. I'm fine. And I'm like, you're dead. Is what you are. Your history. You're going to be, finding another job because you're not paying attention. So there's that. People that are pretending it's not a problem, they're going to drown in the tsunami. Number two is what I call the anti-problem. And that is, picture a casino, right? And you go in there and these blackjack tables all over the place. And all the tables, all the $10 tables are all full. But they're full of robots. And if you or I want to go sit down and play, the only place there's a chair left is in the high roller room. And the ante there's $10,000. And so what feels like to me is the ante to get in this game. And again, I'm talking about making a living, which I arbitrarily defined as $100K. you can define whatever, but if you make much less than that, you either have to have another gig or a partner and have two incomes or whatever. The ante has gone way up to get in this game, in my opinion. And the third thing that's going to keep them is if you're going to be a coach that does this ability to connect, and you are the embodiment, Dan, as you said, and I agree with, there's work involved. Like we all know, development's a mountain without a top. Well, you got to be on the mountain and developing, or you're going to plateau and stagnate. And that's the end of it. And so between head in the sand, the ante going way up, and the rigor, as it were, of being willing to be the embodiment of what you teach and coach, which is only can be from your lived experience, because everything else is, that thing over there that we're talking about. The jury's out, but I'm wondering about like who's going to be willing to pay that price.
I mean, I think, one of the things that we always used to tell college students, at least when I was retiring, was that, the beauty and the curse of a freshman coming to college is that, there's a 75% chance that whatever job they get at graduation doesn't exist yet. And so as we're having the discussion about coaching, and we are thinking about semi-myopically with the exception of the Honda Civic and the Lamborghini piece. But I think for all those people who are at the table with the machines playing blackjack, you either have to go to the high roller room and have the education, the experience, the leverage, the influence to do that, or you got to go to a different casino, or you got to build your own casino. So perhaps as soon as some of these things like coaching perhaps become commoditized, whole new industries come from that. This is also hardwired into the human experience and the human brain, that we are unbelievably adaptable to different things. And, also, while homelessness could go up, while bankruptcies can go up, and all these different things can happen, technically there's going to be some sort of a stopgap against those things happening. So, this might be somewhat, pie in the sky, rainbows and bubble gum, but I think that the adaptability in the human spirit will find new ways and find new professions for everyone who was a coach before, right? When all of us were probably growing up, when you said coach, you thought Vince Lombardi or something,
Of
or
course.
Billy Martin,
Of
right?
course we
And
do,
so
right.
this is it's a relatively new phenomenon, and in 20 years there'll be another phenomenon, and people will say, "Remember what a coach was? Yeah, I had like a life coach and a energy coach and a business coach and a coachy coach and a yoga coach and like all these different things." So, I think that as AI will start to narrow certain fields, and coaching could do that, but also this access to additional information and smart people like Kellan going online and saying, "Well, just ask it this." Eventually, it will create new opportunities that we don't even know yet. So that is the hope.
I love that. And I really appreciate you saying that, because it's true. Growing up, the only coaches were, football coaches or whatever. And the idea of, coaching as a profession has come from two things. One, we invented it. And two, the level of separation and disconnect is going up. Disconnect, families and moving apart, and not, no proximity. The kind of natural structures that filled those functions before have been, moved, gone, done. And so that's sort of what invented it. And other things could be invented that we don't know yet. I love you for pointing that out.
Well, and I also think that the coaching arena has gone awry already, because there's 22-year-old coaches coaching, using the techniques that AI will replace. And it's nothing against 22-year-old people. I was one. But
Really?
But experience and the sense of an elder is what AI won't be able to do as well as a human. And that's where I think, yeah, we could maybe level set back to the idea that not everybody knows everything.
I love that, and thank you, because yesterday or 2 days ago I saw an ad on Facebook. Someone sitting in a beach chair, and the ad underneath said, "Train to be a life coach, work from anywhere, help people and make a good income." And I'm still seeing those ads today, and I'm thinking, I don't need to vomit here because I'll mess up my computer keyboard. or by phone. But, I mean, really, they're
Yeah.
selling that nonsense, and I call it flat out nonsense,
Yeah.
because the only thing that truly matters is, Dan, what you've been talking about, the truth of human connection. Everything else is the communication of information, something we learned about, not the true emotional, spiritual assistance and support that is the function of coaching. I mean, if you even think about sports coaches, the ones that are legendary aren't legendary for their technical skills.
Yeah.
They're legendary for their somehow ability to do stuff in people's hearts and heads to get them to do incredible things. Yeah, that's what AI can't do. But that is what has been, where you say gone awry. That's it. And what's going to be left is that stuff. And the rest of it will be, I think, replaced. I don't know, maybe there'll be some broken down Honda Civics running around, but whatever. So another but what are the dangers or worries or worry points or concerns or, whatever word strikes you in this context?
What I'm afraid of, or what I think a danger is that, I mean, as human beings, there's a gene that inspires laziness, and in today's culture, we mix relaxation with laziness, and I think there's this gray area of what's in between, and I think what that means is we rely on the machine, or we rely on things being easier, and I think there's this false concept in culture today that life's supposed to be easier. Let's make life easier. AI will make life easier. Everything in technology makes it easy. Wait a minute. We grow by being pushed up against our barriers to growth. That's not easy. That's not supposed to be easy. Life isn't supposed to be easy. So I think the danger is, thinking that easy is better. I mean, look at, even in my lifetime, technology has changed so much. But do I have more time in my day because of it? No, because now I'm doing other things, right? Because that's easier. I don't think easy is the answer, and I think that the more we dive into this and stop thinking for ourselves, the more dangerous it becomes, that we lose that idea, we lose that fact, we lose the will to not be easy. That's
Dan, what are you worried about?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jonathan kind of hit it, right? And this has been the ongoing thread of kind of everything I've said. The things I like about AI, I try to make it allow me to be more human, to use more trial and error, to do more A/B testing. But I know most people don't use it that way, and there's certainly going to be an inflection point where it kind of you mentioned it in a sense that those great football coaches at the very beginning of the NFL, the Vince Lombardis of the world, they were technicians, but they were technicians because they showed a way of doing like sweeps and things like that that no one else had ever seen before. And then the ones who are like maybe Bill Belichick's, who say the right thing to the right person, treats everyone differently, like has copious notes on those other things. That's what also makes you successful. Well, the problem with AI is it can't do either of those. It can't relate to you, really. And in most cases, it can't really come up with something new because large language models they don't have a crystal ball with the right answer. They just make a prediction based on information. So the belief that you're going to create something completely new, I mean, for God's sake, I mean, they've had AI on gene editing since the very beginning, and we still don't have a cure for cancer yet. These things, and these things are working on it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for multiple years. So if we have to understand, the major concern here is that these are correct answers, and all human civilization is based on trial and error. And once again, we don't know what a civilization that's not based on trial and error looks like. And to Jonathan's point about the laziness gene, right? I worry about my own kids, like young, black and brown kids growing up. I always tell them, it's like, listen, man, like, you guys are living your best life. You can have whatever haircut you want. You can, like, girls think you're cute. Everyone's dating you. Like, that's not what life was like in the 90s. Certainly not what your grandfather's life was like in the 60s. And I'm worried about you having zero grit and resilience because you never have to go through trial and error. And so we just don't know what that world's going to look like for our kids or our grandkids, of having a whole generation that really grit and resilience is optional. And that's what scares me about what that's going to look like for them.
This is beautiful. We about exhausted our time. So, Jonathan, if you have a closing comment, I want it. Otherwise, I just want to thank you for your heart and being here today. Do you have a thing that you need to say that we didn't talk about yet?
I don't. I haven't thought of one, but I do think that the upswing, the resurgence of spiritual interest that you talked about earlier, and pairing that with sort of going back to nature. Just I'll leave you with this. A question I often ask myself is, why are we inventing technology that nature already solved that problem? And we're trying to better nature, but nature takes everything into consideration, whereas technological solutions solve one problem and then typically do not sync up with all of the other things and create a greater difficulty. So for me, it's always about, I'm just going to go back to nature. I'm just going to go back to the flesh and blood of what it's like to be a human. And then put everything in that perspective.
Dan, final comments.
My final comment is, I love Jonathan's comment. Right. Basically what he's talking about, if you summarize that to a nice marketing term, is basically like the butterfly effect. Like everything is taken into account. Everything is part of the same ecosystem. One thing affects another thing in ways that we won't know maybe for a long period of time. And so I think that at the end of the day, kind of like the last thing I will say is, understand that this is a tool, not the whole toolkit, and understand whoever is the most human will end up winning regardless of what happens here. And to everyone's point, please avoid 22-year-old life coaches, because they actually haven't lived yet. So that's that one.
I love both of you. Jonathan, thank you for sharing your heart, your wisdom, and your beautiful smile with us today. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Dan, thank you for your heart and your wisdom and the perspective. I love the butterfly effect, the flap the wings in Beijing and a hurricane in Kansas kind of story, complex system analysis, everything. But anyway, thank you, Dan, for being here today.
It's always my pleasure. It's my pleasure to serve on this panel, Jonathan. It's a pleasure meeting you, and looking forward to more interactions.
You too, Dan. I enjoy your smile, and Kellan, just keep doing what you're doing. It's amazing to have you in our world, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, listeners, I want you to hear this. Go back and listen again. There's a lot of good nuggets, and I say that in every show, and I don't say that to make the guests feel good. I say that because that's my experience of having been here in this conversation. And consider carefully how you're using this tool. It's amazing. It can do a lot for you, and it can also cripple you and break your legs and, conceptually, to hobble you. Because as Jonathan said, life should be hard. And if you're willing to embrace the process and develop some grit, like Dan was talking about, you will be able to move forward to create your ultimate life.
Never hold back and you'll never ask why. Open your heart and this time around.
Right here, right now. Your opportunity for massive growth is right in front of you. Every episode gives you practical tips and practices that will change everything. If you want to know more, go to KellanFluckigerMedia.com. If you want more free tools, go here, YourUltimateLife.ca. Subscribe, share,